Hey, we're a little early. Okay. Hey, folks, good evening, and thanks for joining me on Phantoms and Monsters Radio. I welcome all new listeners and members to the channel, as well as first timers in the chat. Tonight, we have Daniel Perez, and Daniel Perez was born in 1963 in Norwalk, California. He became interested in Bigfoot by way of the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek in 1973. He is the editor and publisher of Bigfoot Times newsletter, the last ink on paper and mail out newsletter. Now, the newsletter has been going strong since 1998. Daniel is the author of the recently published book, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, a Pictorial Discussion, which was released in January 2025. So before I go any further, I just want to mention that this channel is made possible by you clicking on the subscribe and like buttons and sharing our programming. And if you're watching us on YouTube, Super Chat and Super Thanks donations are truly appreciated. You can click the dollar icon located below the chat box. Other donation links are also shown in the description. Thanks for your consideration. Now, your comments are always welcome. Tell me which accounts you find interesting in our presentation or our interview with Daniel, or any other suggestions for upcoming shows. I want to again thank our chat moderators, Bernadette, Marla, Thomas, and Mike, as well as Kevin and Mary at ESP Network. Now, if you're in the chat and you have a question, please use all caps, and we'll try to get to each one of them. And after Daniel and I start out and talk a bit, I'll go ahead and tell you when you can start putting questions into the chat, and Kevin will send them out to me. So I want to introduce Daniel. Daniel, thanks for joining me this evening.
It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, we finally got you on. We had a little bit of trouble, but we're here. So, go ahead.
Technical difficulties, but
yeah, well, tech doesn't seem to cooperate many times, but we're here. So, first of all, how'd you get started in all this? I am interested. I have quoted you on many occasions. You've been around doing this for almost 30 years, I suppose. Isn't that right?
Decades.
Yeah, decades. That's safe.
I'm 61. In terms of me getting started in the field of Bigfooting, I was about 10 years old, and like everyone else, I saw the movie. Well, not like everyone else, but like many young boys, I happened to see the movie The Legend of Boggy Creek at a walk-in theater. And like I've said many times before, it hit me like a ton of bricks because the narrator of the movie was kind of presenting this like it was for real. And I just thought it was a monster movie based in Arkansas, and they called it the Falk Monster. And kind of scratched my head a little bit, and I was kind of on the fence as to, is this for real or is this not for real? And one thing led to another, and sure enough, I found my way over to the Norwalk Public Library, the town I grew up in, and we kind of figured out what the Falk Monster was, and I guess the librarian said probably Bigfoot, Sasquatch stuff, and so that's how I got immersed in the subject matter at the young age of 10, and I've been going strong ever since.
Wow. Well, you kind of
Prior
parallel me in a bit because I was the same way. I didn't really know much about Bigfoot at all until I had an encounter, and that kind of did it right there for me. And I've been hit. I got hit with the bug right away. So, yeah, I know you've been around doing this quite a many years. In fact, I think I met you back in 1996 at the BC Sasquatch Symposium. I think you were actually
I was
the
the MC.
presenter there.
I was the master of ceremonies there at that Sasquatch Forums in British Columbia. So I was
Right.
there. If I met you, it's been a long time, and I apologize for forgetting you.
Well, we've all changed a whole lot, so you probably don't remember me too well. Um, so the book itself. Now, I haven't read the book yet. I'm going to order it from you because I do want to look at it. I did listen a little bit to your interview with Cliff and Bobo a couple months ago. How did you collect all this information? And I know some of the photographs are something that have not been shown before. Give me the nexus of you actually getting involved with doing this book.
Well, let's go back to Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, the booklet. And
Right.
so I published that, self-published that in 1994. And actually, in 1992 was the 25th anniversary of the Patterson-Gimlin film. So I wanted to do something, but I wasn't sure what I wanted to do. And it ended up being a booklet that was about 23 pages long. And I enlisted the help of the people that were living at the time, Dr. Grover Krantz, John Green, Renee DeHinden, Bob Gimlin, and Bob Titness as well. And back then they were very vibrant, very much alive on the 25th anniversary. And for whatever reason, 92 turned into 94, and that's when it was originally published. And then in 2003, I republished it, and it sold like hotcakes at the International Bigfoot Symposium in Willow Creek, California, September 2003. And so what you're seeing there on the screen is Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, the original booklet. So on the 50th anniversary, I wanted to do something more. And then in between all of this time, just imagine a researcher by the name of George Haas, who was one
Hmm.
of the pioneer Bigfoot researchers living in Oakland, California. And so he got old and he passed on, and he was one of the original collectors. And he turned over his files to a fellow by the name of Warren Thompson.
Hmm.
And I think around 2013, he passed away. And so when he passed away, he turned over all his files to me. And so
Wow.
that's why I now have the largest files on the planet. But within that collection, George Haas was with John Green on June 23rd, 1968, when they went back to the Patterson-Gimlin film site because John Green felt he wanted to do a recreation film of where Patty was walking using Jim McLaren, who's still living, as his stand-in model because Jim McLaren in boots was about 6 feet 5 inches tall. Very tall individual. I met him once in 2003. And lo and behold, when they get to the Patterson-Gimlin film site, the remains of the footprints were still evident in the ground. And you had, okay, so you opened your eyes. So that's from October of 67 to June of 68. And you said, well, that's impossible. That is not impossible because George Haas photo documented the remains of the footprints, and they put, when they saw the remains of the footprints, they put toilet paper in there with rocks atop them so they could see the trackway, which was plainly visible. And some of those photos are in my Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, a pictorial discussion. And so, and let me add to that, a researcher by the name of Stephen Strufert actually did his own experiments at Bluff Creek on the sandbar where Patty was walking, and he left a good indentation boot print in the sand there, the sandy soil. And I think more than a year later, it was still, you could still visibly see that footprint. And that soil in that area is what the Forest Service calls blue goo, because when you take pictures of it with maybe more with film than rather than digital photography, it has a blue tint to it. And that's from the serpentine mineral that's in the soil. And that soil just has remarkable properties of holding tracks together long after the fact. You would think that when Patty was there in October of 67, that the next rainstorm, maybe weeks later, the tracks would be gone. That was not the case. In June of 68, the remnants of the tracks were still visible. And George Haas, when he was there, saw the trackway himself in person, and he picked up 3 rocks inside one of the tracks where Patty had walked, and he took those home as souvenirs. So when he passed away, those went to Warren Thompson. When Warren Thompson passed away, those came to my collection. So they're the only 3 small rocks that Patty is known to have stepped on, and a photo of them is in my book, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, a pictorial discussion.
Interesting. Interesting. Well, let me ask you this. When you first got acquainted with the PG film, what was your first impressions of it?
My first impression was I didn't know what to make of it because you saw the subject bouncing around the screen all over the place, you know,
Yeah.
and so what I did is I eventually took my father's 8mm movie camera and filmed the PG film on a commercial advertisement right off the television. And I took that film and developed it and put it in the hallway in the home that I grew up in, closed all the doors, and projected it on the white door so I could see it better and slow it down because the projector we had the slow-mo feature so I could see it better. And as I started to have this study session of the film early on with what was available to me, just filming it off the television in a commercial setting, I became more confident in the film. And it took much later when I actually met Renee DeHinden, John Green, and Bob Titmus to become even more confident in the film, because these were 3 of the individuals who were directly involved with Roger Patterson, Bob Gimlin, and the film site. And so that brought the confidence level up even more. And then what really did it later on was when social media came into effect and YouTube came into effect, and I guess I'll just call it technology, where they were able to take the film and stabilize it. So instead of Patty jiggling all around on film, she stabilized and she walked steady across the sandbar. And so that's when you could see her and really assess and analyze her for all that she's worth. And so it's either your confidence level is either going to go up or down. And for me, as a very detailed type of individual, my confidence level went through the roof.
Yeah, I've always felt it was a genuine actual film of an actual Bigfoot, and of course we've had a lot of controversy as far as, if it was real and people giving conjecture as far as what had actually happened, doubting Patterson and Gimlin both. And, it, you know, I don't, honestly, I don't know how Bob puts up with it, but he does. And, he's been questioned and been doubted so many years and so much about it, but he's very straightforward and has stuck with it. And of course, with people like you and others who have actually been involved with the whole phenomena itself, and in particular the PG film. I mean, yeah, I mean, and of course, I'm not out in California, so I don't. I have, and I've never been to the site, so it gives people like me some confidence as it being actual film.
Yeah, and we're approaching the 60th year. What is it, 57 years now? 57,
Yeah.
58 years since that film. And there's still, the people on social media are endlessly debating this film. And it's one of the most analyzed pieces of film in the history of the world, probably outside of the Kennedy assassination film shot by Abraham Zapruder. And so I'll tell you why it stands as the pinnacle of all of Bigfooting. And let's go through them. One, it's a daylight film. They captured film, not video. And film, in my view, is really kind of superior to digital cinematography. You have two eyewitnesses who viewed the subject. One was filming. Right after the incident happened, it was reported to the newspaper by Roger Patterson. So he put the word out. He also called the scientists from British Columbia to try to get them down there to the Patterson-Gimlin film site to put tracking dogs on it. So I'll stop you right there. If you were hoaxing something, that's the last thing you would want to do. If you were hoaxing something, the last thing you would want to do is do a broad daylight, full sun film, because the sunlight would expose everything, not conceal it. If you want to do a fake costume, you do it where it's approaching nighttime, where there's a lot of shadows. But here, the subject is in full daylight. Within that day, Roger Patterson told several people where the film was shot. So it wasn't like he was trying to conceal the film site. He told people where it was. So people knew within the day where that film site was. In addition, they shot a separate roll of film, 16 millimeter, of the footprints on the sandbar. So that's the second piece of documentation of what was there, where Patty walked. So you have the film of the subject, you have the film of the trackway, and then Roger and Bob made about 4 plaster castings of the tracks in the ground. So it is, even today, the best documented case in the history of Bigfooting. And so it stands on the shoulders of everything ever in terms of Bigfooting, and nothing has ever been better than that.
So, tell us how some of what's in the book itself and some of the new material that has never been seen before, as well as some other commentary that you'd like to talk about.
Well, just recently I was on the phone with a fellow by the name of Dave Connolly, and he's the producer for Josh Gates for, I'm not sure if it's a continuing series or a new series for Discovery Channel, Expedition Files or Expedition Unknown.
That's
I'm not
the
exactly
new show.
sure.
Yeah, that's the new show.
They want me to be on an episode when they have a discussion about the PG film. And they said, well, it didn't take, I think David explained to me, it didn't take long before we started looking for experts on the film that we found you. It was like you were the go-to person. And so they phoned, and so I had a discussion with them, and I said, one of the things I discuss in the book is the I am index. And if I could find the page here. So when Dr. Jeff Meldrum was writing his book, Legend Meets Science, he discussed the I am index. And let me just explain that briefly to the listening audience. That's basically the ratio of your arm length to your leg length. And so there's a ratio there, and it turns out to be a number. And so the IM index in relationship to, we're different than a gorilla, different than a chimpanzee, different from Patty. And so Patty's IM index is different than ours. But remarkably, Patty's IM index matches almost precisely, lays right over it, the fossil that was discovered in Ethiopia by the name, many of us who follow anthropology know it, Lucy.
Mm-hmm.
She's a dead ringer. And so right there, it's just like, well, wait a minute. If Roger Patterson faked this film, how would he know that the IM index of Lucy would be the same as Patty, but Lucy would be discovered after the PG film was shot? In other words, that would be like looking into the future.
Right. Interesting.
And so just in general, this book here, Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, which was self-published by me, came out January of this year. It offers some never-before-seen photos that have to do with the PG film site like you've never seen before. A fellow from Mississippi by the name of Henry May, who bought a copy of the book, and in fact, because he subscribes to the newsletter, the Bigfoot Times, he was able to snap up a super limited edition. And the super limited edition had my autograph, my signature. There's a small soil sample that's underneath Scotch tape. And there's a Bigfoot stamp, like an outline of a Bigfoot with the numbered edition that they have purchased. But so he did a YouTube review of the book, and he says on a 1 to 10 scale, and Henry May has been around forever, like me.
Oh yeah, he has been.
And he goes on a 1 to 10 scale, this book is a 20.
Ooh, good.
And I was just blown away because it's just like, 1 to 10, the best you can get is a 10. And so he rated me far above that mark. So I was just tickled pink by his commentary. So because no one had, before the book was released, there was only teasers that I had put up on Facebook as to what this thing was all going to be about.
Right.
And so people were guessing it could be really, really good or really, really bad. And so far, all the reviews are really, really good. And I'm just blown away by it.
Well, congratulations. I have talked to a couple people who have looked at it, and I talked to them before we did this interview, and I'm definitely going to get a copy of my own. So save me one.
Well, the first printing, there's 1,000 copies printed. And so you can't find this book on Amazon. The
Right.
only place you can get it is from me. And you could simply go to bigfoottimes.net, my website, to order your own copy. The book sells for $39.54. And so for those people who are geeky about the PG film, just remember the PG film has 954 frames in it. That's a verified film count that was done by Bill Munns, 954 frames. So you look at the price tag, 3954. 954 is the number of frames in the film. So the price mimics the number of frames in the film. And so I wanted to put that in there. It's just like, well, wait a minute. Usually you pay $9.95 for something or something of that nature, never 54 cents. But here it's $9.54 for that very reason, for the remembrance of the film.
Great. Now, folks, if you're in the chat, if you have any questions, please put them up on caps, and we'll try and get to it. And now the area at Bluff Creek, in that area, how have there been any other sightings in that area or recorded since the Patty film?
Oh, absolutely, yes. We spoke with a gentleman, I think in 2021, who actually captured an image on one of the roads going up to the film site, up in the trees, not in the trees, but up on the ridge in the trees. That's something that they took a scenic photograph And then I want to say it was in the newsletter, probably around maybe 2019 when this was done. And then because they had traveled that road before, they had looked at the photo after the fact, and they said, well, wait a minute, whatever there is blocking those two trees is no longer there, but it was there when we took this photo. And the guy gave us the impression that maybe this was one of them up there on the ridge as a lookout for the rest of them, because later it wasn't seen. And it's a perfect place to have a vantage point of the road below.
Mm.
So yes, there have been sightings up in the area since that time and before. And many people think too that the Patterson-Gimlin film was an isolated affair, which is far from the truth, because prior to the PG film, all of the Bigfoot activity and the coining of the term Bigfoot was from that Bluff Creek area, from the Bluff Creek area, the Blue Creek area, Blue Creek Mountain, all happening in that immediate vicinity, before and after.
Kevin Morrison, who's in the chat, said he has your book, number 157, with your signature and soil from the film. It's a AAA book, historical analysis on the film site. So, yeah, I mean, I've been hearing the same thing from folks. So, congratulations! It's a monumental achievement, and I'm hoping you do very well with it. Go ahead.
Just as a note, I mailed out 4 copies of the book today, and so I don't know when someone is going to go to the Bigfoot Times website or whatever and order a copy, but it's usually when I get home from work that I see, oh, these are orders, and I've got to get those out. So the orders are still coming in, and I'm still filling the orders. But again, the first edition, the first printing, is 1,000 copies. And the first 352 copies, think frame 352, are strictly for the Bigfoot Times members. The general public could still get a copy, but it's not going to be the super limited edition.
Okay. Our friend Luis Castillo has a question in the chat. He hooked us up together. You and he had breakfast together, and you were talking while you were all eating, and that's how this became what it became. And he asked, what are your thoughts on the recent video of Bigfoot or giant in the Victorville, California, about a month ago?
To be honest, I don't think I've seen it yet.
Okay.
I have yet, if it's out there, I've yet to see it, because there's so much out there now that I don't have an opinion on it. I would love to see it. Victorville is not too far from me. The Victorville, Hesperia area, that's still the Southern California area. I'd have to see the video to make an opinion about it.
Okay. Dagnammit asks, what type of cryptid do you think the Grassman from Ohio is?
I think that the Grassman is just another example of Bigfoot, but with a different name. Because Jody Cook from Ohio was one of the original investigators of the Grassman back in the day, in the early mid-90s. And so I was able to get some of the information there, I guess, in book form. And to me, it was your typical Bigfoot, but by a different name.
Okay. Yeah, the species, and I consider Bigfoot as a species, but I believe they have other races, in different areas. Is that your thought on it as well?
Absolutely. If you start to, no one has ever done this, and maybe someone should, and I know at this point in my life, I don't have the necessary time to do it. But I suspect, well, I don't suspect, I know that just even a small sample of, say, reports from the Pacific Northwest compared to reports from, say, Florida, Georgia, there's a marked difference in what's coming out in terms of physical description. So
right.
If there's a subspecies or a different species down there, it would not surprise me at all, because if you look at species of bears, we have all different types, from the polar bear to the grizzly bear to the brown bear to the black bear, but the brown bear and the black bear are essentially the same but different colors. But there's a whole And around the world, there's all sorts of different types of bears, but they're still bears. And so the same may be true of Bigfoot, but what seems to be a consistent theme is that they favor a nocturnal lifestyle. I don't know if this is for preservation of themselves or whether that's just how they naturally are.
I got a question from Robo1776, and thank you for the super chat as well. He says, Daniel, first, thank you for the great work on Patty. So, what is the leading consensus of the origin of Patty as of today?
Ooh, that's actually a very, very good question. I would say not the leading consensus, but the general consensus is that she might be a member of what scientists have dubbed Gigantopithecus from the distant past, that we know from mandibles and dental teeth is the only thing we have of that quote unquote extinct species. And the only reason I would say the general consensus would have to go in that direction is because the giant proportions of what we are seeing in the woods and what Gigantopithecus was based on the size. There are other ideas, but when it all comes down to it, I like to tell people who are willing to listen, I think Bigfoot is just, I mean, this is a very general way of looking at just another primate in its most basic format. What it is, as Rene Dahinden says, he says, you know, we can compare notes after the fact, after we get one. Right now, let's just say it's a primate. And I'm comfortable with that because we're primates. And it's obviously not like us, it's different, but when it comes right down to it, it's a primate.
Leacham, he has three questions actually, but the first one is, other than the Patty film, what do you think is the best evidence we have?
Probably footprints, and the
Okay.
vast amount of footprints that have been found here in North America. And we have some really good examples that many of them found here in the Pacific Northwest, but also in Georgia by, I can't think of the guy's name, but he was part of law enforcement and he was investigating disturbances there. And he cast, I think, a lone footprint there in 1997, 1996, and it's the best casting we have from Florida. We also have some castings from Ohio that were made by B. Mills, probably 2020 or thereabouts. Mm-hmm. And I've seen those castings in person, and all I can say is I'm very, very impressed because prior to B. Mills coming on the scene, there wasn't a whole lot of footprint castings from the state of Ohio. It was few and far between. And she kind of made this big difference, this big leap. So I would say outside of the film of Patty, I would say the strongest evidence is the footprints because something has to leave those footprints.
Absolutely. The second part of the question is, would you want to see one or have you ever seen one?
I have never seen a Bigfoot. I've seen tracks on various occasions, and the only drawback is the tracks that I saw were not that good. They weren't pristine, stellar tracks. They were the first one. It had rained in Hemet, and those tracks were kind of washed out. Had we been there before it rained, we probably, myself and Doug Trapp, this was 1979, 1980. We probably could have seen some really good tracks because it was right next to a creek that was formed when it rained. And it looked like this subject had walked parallel to the creek and then crossed the creek and then took off into some brush. Cool. And was there a third part to that question?
Yeah, there was a third part. They wanted to know what your opinion was on other cryptids like Dogman, sea monsters, flying creatures, etc.
Dogman, I think, is probably Bigfoot. Aquatic, marine animals, absolutely. I'm all in favor of Catabosaurus. I'm all in favor of Ogopogo, Nessie, that kind of thing. And the the video that was shot off the coast of Florida that looked like I guess the couple that was on a boat, I guess they said it looked like a giant telephone pole that appeared to be wrestling with a juvenile manatee or something like that. And you could see that on YouTube, and I'm very impressed with that. And that's probably an unknown aquatic animal that we science has not caught up with yet.
Yeah, I think we're going to get a few of those as years go by too, as well. Uh, Flubber Lane asks, were there any hairs found from Bigfoot in the Patterson area, in the area of the Patterson incident?
No, unfortunately not. I think the closest we came to that was late October of 1967 when Bob Titmus arrived on the film site. He said according to his testimony, that the Patty had walked up the mountainside there and sat down on a deep carpet of ferns, and that according to him, that when she sat down, she had a clear and unobstructed view of Roger and Bob back on the film site. So she may have just sat there in safety, wondering what were they doing down on the film site and why were they fascinated by looking at her footprints, which to her probably would be no big deal, but to them
Right.
it was. And so possibly if Bob was a taxidermist, and although taxidermy does involve hair and stuff, fur, to my knowledge, when he looked at where Patty had sat with her buttocks on the ferns, he did not notice any hair there, because I think he probably would have looked and he probably could have found, but no hair has ever been retrieved from Patty.
Jose Sanchez asked, have you seen the video where the female Bigfoot realizes she's being filmed and panics holding her baby Bigfoot and runs like crazy? You
Yes,
could just make out her expression of fear before she bolts.
yes, I've seen that video. The only trouble with that video is that two things that you should be very cautious of as a Bigfooter. One is if you don't know where it was shot, that's your first red flag. And two, you don't know who shot the video, that's your second
Exactly.
red flag. And if you
Well,
have two red flags, just
I know the individual who supposedly captured that video. It was in Western Maryland. So but I can't say anything beyond that because I really don't know.
yeah,
But I remember,
it's just it makes you wonder, why hasn't the person come forward to have a deep discussion about this footage? And so that, unlike Roger and Bob, they came forward the very first day within
yeah.
hours of what transpired.
Sir Wolf asked, and this is a question I wanted to ask: do you think that these invisible glimmer men or these cloaked beings that kind of imitate the Predator film, do you think they are a cloaked Bigfoot?
No, no.
Okay.
I think right there, I don't mean to be rude, but I think you've gotten off the track quite a bit, because dogs and cats and leopards and tigers and walruses and whales, they don't cloak, they don't disappear, and then reappear later. They're always there.
Now, here's my question. Your opinion. Do you believe there is a supernatural aspect to Bigfoot and other cryptids?
No,
Oh, you
I
don't?
think I think a lot of people wrap that around the mystery, because we haven't solved the mystery. Because we haven't solved the mystery in terms of the theories about it, it's still the Wild West, and people could say anything without any adult supervision. And it just, I suspect a couple of things, because the species is so small in terms of population in general,
Hmm.
and they seem to be favor nocturnal activities, is why it seems to be have that supernatural connotation wrapped around it. But I don't buy into any of that at all. I think we're just dealing with a natural terrestrial creature from planet Earth.
Um, let's see. Cans Quatch asks, what do you think of all the analysis of blown up frames of the PG film like MK Davis?
I
I
think some of the
don't know if
work,
you're there.
uh, I think the best in terms of needle sharp images was done by Bonnie and DeHinden in 1980, where they had access to the original film and made Cibachrome prints of the subject itself, which is kind of a super saturation
Right.
of the colors in the film, where you could really see the subject much better. What MK Davis, by the way, is in this book, and he did some actually groundbreaking work, and he called it secondary image tagging. And so what he was able to establish by studying the film was that as Patty walks, there's a certain area where you see the wake. When a boat goes in the water, and say you're not seeing the boat, but you see the wake behind it, you know that something was there before it. So the same thing in certain frames of the PG film that MK Davis discovered is that as Patty walks, there's indentations in the sandbar where she had just been, and
Right.
that is discussed in this book. So MK Davis is in this book for that work, his individual original work. And so what I wanted to celebrate in this work is people who had made original, significant observations about the film.
Um, let's see. Fakir Furt, what do you feel is the range of Bigfoot in North America? Are there states or provinces where it's not located?
Hawaii, and basically outside of Hawaii, you seem to have Bigfoot reports in every state and
Yeah.
every province. There seems to be some states that are more, you have a higher concentration of reports than other states, like Ohio consistently produces reports of Bigfoot. Washington State consistently reports of Bigfoot, as is the province of British Columbia. And
Right.
and then you look at it and you have an abundance of food supply, an abundance of cover. And so those are some of the things that would be ideal for a Bigfoot.
Um, Robo 1776 asked at one time in the 70s, he believes, was there controversy on John Green and others who went to hunt, track, shoot Patty? What are your thoughts?
Nonsense. As Green explained when he was living, that their whole purpose early on was to collect evidence of Bigfoot. And it's just like, had they done so, of course, they would have announced it to the world, and not conspiracy nonsense with Bigfoot and blood and hound dogs and all that. That was kind of put out there by, I think, two people, M.K. Davis and David Paulides. And I think they were possibly intentionally doing this to get attention for themselves rather than the subject matter. And,
Yeah.
you know, on social media and the internet, you can be whatever you want to be.
I mean, between you and me, I don't think John Green would even got even, even would have given that thought at all. I mean, as far as hurting one of these creatures, knowing him. And yeah, so I'm glad you said what you said. Jose Sanchez asked, have you heard of any recent reports of the white Bigfoot, as in Russia? Maybe their population is lower than our brown and black, brown and black cousins.
Well, that's interesting that he brings that up. I guess I've heard of a couple of Bigfoot reports, the Almasty or whatever you want to call it in Russia, that
Hmm.
are white colored. But if you look here in North America, there are reports of white colored Bigfoot that have been seen. And in fact, the late Alan Plaster in Texas actually took a Polaroid photo of an alleged Bigfoot in the Lake Worth area of Texas in November of '69,
Right.
and that subject is very white or white colored, and so that might be something that is manifested not just in us, because we have in our species we have albinos, and possibly in Bigfoot too, the Bigfoot species who have albinos, but extremely rare and far in between. But here again, not only are there reports of them, but Alan Plaster, the late Alan Plaster, may have been the first person to get capture on Polaroid film an example of an albino Bigfoot in 1959, just less than 2 years or a little over 2 years after Roger Patterson got his footage.
Dag Nabbit asks again, have you heard of a Bigfoot with red eyes? Supposedly they're mean.
No, in fact, when John Green was doing his studies, and you look at his book from 1978, he does a breakdown of many of the Bigfoot reports, and you find that many of the eye shines, the colors of the eyes during nighttime, are of a reddish color. It's a very common thing, but there's also reports of having yellow colored eyes during the evening hours, and so the red and the yellow are very common. I'm not sure what it's all about or what it means, only that the witnesses reported that the eyes seemed to be red at a certain time.
Kevin Morrison asked, Daniel, what's your opinion that Patty wasn't alone that day at Bluff Creek?
Her companions were not far away.
Yeah, I imagine so.
I find it difficult to believe that she would be out there solo by herself. And so you could kind of think that there's safety in numbers, and she was probably with a small group that was their pack, their family, and she just happened to be away at the time, possibly just coming down off the mountain to get a drink of water. I'm not certain exactly what she was doing, but when they went back there in June of '68, and this is in my book again, is that George Haas saw on the film site that there seemed to be a little footprint there that looked like a little person's footprint. And Jim McLaren told him that, oh, that's just a person walking around barefoot. And so that kind of, George Haas wrote about that in his notes, but that kind of suggests that perhaps, maybe just perhaps, that in June of '68, Patty was back there and that her offspring was with her as well, and that those were the footprints. I don't know that to be fact. It's strictly speculation. But yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised that the Blue Creek Mountain activity prior to October of '67, the stuff that was happening in August, September of '67, just a few months earlier, that Patty was probably part of that group as well. And just for the readers or the people who are watching, just the flyby distance from Blue Creek Mountain to Bluff Creek, the Patterson-Gimlin film site, it's probably no more than 7 miles. And if you're a creature that's normally walking all the time, that's nothing.
Yeah. Robo1776 asked, Todd Gatewood and Alex Merkin applied film technology to reveal new details. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I actually spoke with Todd Gatewood a few months ago, and I asked him point blank about the image of Patty, the close-up of the face, and he didn't seem to answer my question specifically. But what you've seen on social media, especially on Facebook, where it seems to have a big indentation on the side of the head, I don't buy that as original, something that is pulled from the film itself. I think there's maybe some artistic ability plugged into that, in that you're seeing something that may be artificial rather than what's actually on the film, because that is not actually on the film. And if he says so, and say, for instance, it went to court, that you would have to prove that assertion by actually looking at the film frames. And when you look at the film frames, that is not there.
Cans Quatch asks, where have been some of your favorite locations to research?
Believe it or not, the Sierras up near Tahoe, I think, is a very, very good area. Another good area.
I get a lot of reports from up there around Tahoe.
Yeah, it just seems like either the California side of Tahoe or the Nevada side of Tahoe just seems to be a very good area. And also the Northern California area is another good area to look for Bigfoot. And I would say, just in general, if I could drop everything and just go look for Bigfoot on a full-time basis, I would favor the Pacific Northwest 100%.
Yeah.
I would focus just here because it's easy to move around here in the Pacific Northwest, unlike other areas in the United States.
Rowboat 1776. There are reports that Bigfoot or Sasquatch have a self-generated bioluminescence from their eyes. No reflection, but true glow from their eyes at night. What do you think?
That could be. That I would not. It would not surprise me the least bit because as science grew, say from the 40s to the 50s to the 60s to the 70s, just imagine all the things we learned about the species that are living on the planet and all the things that were miraculous that we didn't know before, and all the stuff that, say, chimpanzees and their natural environment and what they were all about. A lot of this stuff wasn't even known before Jane Goodall came on the scene. It was kind of a mysterious area, although we knew chimpanzees existed. We suspect Bigfoot exists, and this idea of bioluminescence or this ability to maybe have flashlights in your eyes for nighttime vision, because they seem to be able to move around quite well in pitch blackness. And so we as a species, Homo sapiens, we can't see in the dark, period. Once it's jet black when you're out in the woods, you need a flashlight to move around. And so that begs the question, if you go back to Stacy Brown Jr. and Sr. when they got their footage in Florida, that I interviewed both of them, they said that whatever was out there was having no trouble seeing it in pitch black darkness, that it was moving around. And so that would suggest to you that whatever was there had this complete ability to see in darkness. And it's just like, we can't do this. We don't know the mechanism which enables them to do this. If they have something that God has gifted them in terms of supervision, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if they have it.
Now, I know they did the investigations of the skunk ape down in Florida. Do you think it might that race or that part of Bigfoot genre? They have a specific type of ability as opposed to other Bigfoot.
I think maybe they're more aquatic based.
Okay.
Because to move around down in those swampy areas, that it's not just all on land. There's probably a lot of water to move through, and I think they're just probably a lot more comfortable in an aquatic environment. And I wouldn't even be surprised if their feet might have more webbing between the toes to move around better in the water.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, the Miyaka skunk ape is very interesting to me. Jose Sanchez asked, "Do you think that it's possible that Bigfoot and ETs have any some form of relationship in the past, present, based on accounts?"
I'm not certain about that. I've read a lot of literature on the subject, and the person who made the best connection actually happened to be in Australia, who wrote a book. His name was Mark Moravec. And he wrote where there were specific instances, and I think this is coming from Australia, where there was, say, a UFO in the vicinity of a Yowie report that were so close together that you would have to make the connection, unlike here in the United States. People speculate about that, but I would have to see much better proof to say, like, this is what is going on. But I mean, who's to say that a UFO is coming into the forest and they happen to see a Bigfoot from their spaceship and say, like, hey, what's that? And it just happens to be there happens to be a person present to observe this. That doesn't mean they're associated. It just means that he's observing two phenomena at one time.
Right. Short Order Cook asked, "Daniel, is there any research on Bigfoot concerning a medicine, plants, and what they use for ailments? Natural, natural build."
That's another good question. I don't know. but I'm sure they've got it figured out because I'm sure as they go through their lives that I'm sure they've been bitten by a rattlesnake, and I'm sure they have their answer to what to do, or whatever the case may be, that if they come in contact with something that is bad for them, maybe they ate something bad, they probably have an answer to that in terms of their herbal medicine that's found in the forest.
Right. Can Squatch asks, what do you think of Native Americans' view of Bigfoot as spiritual as well as physical?
Well, the Native Americans, the idea of a physical animal, I'm with them. But if you look at the Native Americans in general, the Indians, is that they talk about the eagle, the bear, the whale in spiritual connotation, but white men or the modern Americans, we don't look at them that way. We just look at them as a physical animal. If there's a spiritual side to it, we are not necessarily recognizing it as the Native Americans do. So that's all I can say, is that they see them differently for different reasons.
Well, Daniel, I want to thank you for coming on tonight. I'd really appreciate you taking the time to do so. Tell everybody where they can get your book and any other information that you want to give out.
If you want to get your copy of Bigfoot at Bluff Creek, a pictorial discussion, simply go to bigfoottimes.net and you could get your copy there. And if you get your order in tonight, they'll go out in the mail Saturday morning.
Well, I really appreciate you coming on, and good luck again with the book. Continue good luck and lots of sales. And I know you put a lot into this. So again, appreciate you coming on. Thanks again to Luis Castilla for getting us together on this. And you take care, and you have a great weekend.
Well, you too. Thank you for having me.
So, folks, again, I want to thank you for coming in tonight. And if you have donated, it's truly appreciated. Your support's what makes all this possible. And please like, subscribe, and share. And if you have a sighting or encounter report that you'd like to be considered for the personal report show, as well as Phantoms and Monsters, feel free to forward it to my email at lonstrickler@phantomsandmonsters.com. So until we meet again, stay healthy and safe, and I'll see you next Friday. Good night.